Welcome to my channel. Today, we dive deep into the Scott Peterson case, a story that captivated a nation and revealed how appearances can deceive. Modesto, California. A quiet, family-centered town nestled in the heart of the San Joaquin Valley. On the surface, it looked like the perfect place to settle down, raise children, and live the American dream. And for Scott and Laci Peterson, that dream seemed to be coming true. Scott was a good-looking, well-spoken salesman. Laci, a radiant 27-year-old, was full of life. She loved gardening, animals, and decorating their cozy home for the holidays. She was 8 months pregnant, expecting a baby boy. They named him Connor. To friends, neighbors, and even their families, they looked like the picture of happiness. But on the morning of December 24, 2002, Christmas Eve, everything changed. Scott claimed he left their home that morning to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina. Laci, he said, was home preparing for the holiday. But by that evening, when she didn't show up for their family dinner, panic set in. Calls were made. Police were contacted. Search teams formed. And a missing persons alert was issued for Laci Denise Peterson, last seen around 9:30 a.m., walking her dog, Mackenzie, in their neighborhood. The community came together fast. Flyers went up. Volunteers canvassed the area. Candlelight vigils lit up the winter nights. But as hours turned into days, and days into weeks, a cold realization began to creep in. This wasn't just a missing persons case. It was something darker. What had happened to Laci Peterson? Who would want to hurt her? And why? As investigators dug deeper, they would uncover secrets, ones that shattered the illusion of a perfect marriage and led to a nationwide media frenzy. But first, they had to find her. As Christmas passed without a sign of Laci Peterson, concern turned to fear. The community of Modesto, once so full of holiday cheer, now felt gripped by unease. Police launched a full-scale search. Helicopters scanned the skies. Boats swept the nearby rivers. Bloodhounds tracked her scent. And neighbors, friends, even strangers combed through fields and alleyways. But there was something strange, something that didn't sit right with investigators. Scott Peterson. He appeared calm. Too calm. He wasn't acting like a man whose wife and unborn son had just vanished. In the first 48 hours of a missing persons case, time is critical. Investigators began retracing Scott's steps on that morning. He said he left for a solo fishing trip around 9:30 a.m. heading to the Berkeley Marina, about 90 miles away. But when asked what he was fishing for, Scott couldn't recall. He didn't know the type of fish in the water. He had no cooler, no bait, and only one lure. Then came a discovery that raised more questions than answers. Around 10:30 a.m. on December 24, a neighbor found the Petersons' golden retriever, Mackenzie, wandering the neighborhood, alone. The dog's leash was still attached. That suggested Laci may never have made it to the park as Scott claimed. Still, there was no evidence of foul play. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No broken furniture. No screams. Was Laci taken? Did she leave on her own? Or was someone close to her hiding the truth? Scott gave media interviews. He asked for help. He appeared on TV next to Laci's family. But behind the scenes, police were beginning to follow a different lead. One that would shatter public trust, and break the Peterson family apart. In the days following Laci Peterson's disappearance, public support surged. Hundreds of volunteers continued to search. Billboards with Laci's face towered over highways. News outlets across the country picked up the story. Scott stood beside Laci's family during press conferences. He thanked the public. He promised to keep searching. But something didn't feel right. As police quietly investigated, they noticed inconsistencies. Scott had changed details in his story. At first, he said he went golfing. Then later, it became fishing. Small changes. But suspicious. Investigators turned their attention to Scott's phone records. And that's when they uncovered something explosive. A woman named Amber Fry. Amber was a massage therapist and single mother living in Fresno, California. She had met Scott through a friend in November, just weeks before Laci went missing. He told her he was single. Divorced, even. And then, after Laci's disappearance hit the news, Amber made a shocking realization. The man she had been dating was Laci Peterson's husband. Amber contacted Modesto detectives immediately. And what she did next would prove vital to the case. She agreed to wear a wire. For weeks, Amber recorded phone calls with Scott. Conversations where he lied, evaded, and spun a twisted web of deception. On one of those calls, on New Year's Eve, Scott told Amber he was in Paris watching fireworks near the Eiffel Tower. In reality, he was at a candlelight vigil for his missing wife and unborn son. The facade of a grieving husband was crumbling. Laci's family, who once stood by Scott, now pulled away in heartbreak. The community felt betrayed. The media smelled blood. But even with the lies and the affair, there was still one thing missing. Evidence. By January 2003, the world knew Scott Peterson's secret. Amber Fry had gone public. In a press conference, flanked by police and her attorney, she made her statement clear: "I'm here to cooperate fully with the police. I had no idea Scott was married. And I had no idea his wife was missing." The media erupted. Scott's image, once that of a heartbroken husband, quickly changed to something darker. Headlines called him a liar. A cheater. A man living a double life. But in the eyes of law enforcement, cheating wasn't a crime. It wasn't enough to prove murder. They needed more. A body. A weapon. A motive that could stand up in court. Still, detectives kept digging. They learned Scott had bought a boat, just 2 weeks before Laci disappeared. Quietly. In cash. And without telling anyone. When they inspected the small fishing boat, they found no blood, no hair, no physical trace of Laci. But they couldn't ignore the timing, or the strange homemade anchors made of cement found at his warehouse. He claimed he used them for fishing. But investigators believed otherwise. He may have made more than one anchor. But there was evidence he made several. Meanwhile, Scott's behavior continued to raise eyebrows. While thousands searched for Laci, he was busy tracking news stories about himself. He sold her car. Looked into selling their house. And seemed more concerned with his image than with finding his wife. All while Laci's family begged the public for help, clinging to hope that somehow, she and baby Connor were still alive. But months passed. The leads dried up. April 13, 2003. A spring morning along the rocky shore of San Francisco Bay. A couple walking near the water's edge spotted something strange. A small body, badly decomposed, had washed up on the shoreline near Richmond. It was the remains of a full-term baby boy. The umbilical cord had been cut. 1 day later, just a mile away, a second body surfaced. It was that of a woman, also badly decomposed, her limbs missing, her body unrecognizable. But the maternity pants she wore offered a chilling clue. Forensic experts got to work. DNA testing was rushed. Within days, the results came back. The infant was Connor Peterson. The woman was his mother, Laci. She had been found, at last. The remains discovered near the San Francisco Bay have been positively identified as Laci Peterson and her unborn son. The nation grieved. Candlelight vigils were held across Modesto. Strangers wept for a woman they never knew. Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, was devastated. Her worst fears had come true. Laci's dream of motherhood ended in the very waters where Scott claimed to have gone fishing on Christmas Eve. The location wasn't just symbolic, it was exactly where Scott told police he'd been the day his wife vanished. Now the case wasn't just about suspicion. It was about murder. With this discovery, detectives and prosecutors felt they had enough to act. They had motive, opportunity, and now, evidence. But Scott wasn't at home. He wasn't even in Modesto. He was on the run. April 18, 2003. Just days after the remains of Laci and Connor Peterson were identified, law enforcement made their move. Scott Peterson had left Modesto. He was heading south, toward the Mexican border. Investigators feared he was about to flee the country. They tracked his location to a golf course in La Jolla, near San Diego. But Scott wasn't there to play golf. He was staying with his half-sister. And when police closed in, they found more than just a man out of town. Inside Scott's car, officers discovered an alarming collection of items. $15,000 in cash. Multiple cell phones, camping gear. A shovel. 12 Viagra tablets. His brother's driver's license. Bleached hair. A grown-out goatee. And maps of the Mexican border. He had everything he needed to disappear. Scott was taken into custody without incident. The charge, capital murder. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. News helicopters followed his every move. Crowds gathered outside the Modesto Police Department, some shouting, some crying. For many, this moment felt like justice finally knocking on the door. But others still had doubts. There was no direct evidence, no murder weapon, no eyewitness, no time of death. Only circumstantial clues. Still, prosecutors were confident. They believed Scott had planned Laci's murder in advance. That he lured her out of sight, killed her, and used his new boat to dump her body into the San Francisco Bay. All, while maintaining the image of a devoted husband. A jury would have to decide, was this grieving man a victim of public hysteria? Or a cold-blooded killer hiding behind charm and lies? The trial of Scott Peterson was about to begin, and it would grip the nation like few cases ever had. June 1, 2004. Over a year after Laci Peterson vanished, the murder trial of Scott Peterson began in Redwood City, California. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the sidewalks. Camera crews fought for position. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a national event. Scott was charged with 2 counts of murder, one for Laci, and one for their unborn son, Connor. The state would seek the death penalty. Prosecutor Rick DeStaso opened with a powerful statement: this defendant didn't want to be a father. He wanted freedom. He killed Laci and Connor to get it. The prosecution laid out their timeline. They claimed Scott killed Laci on the night of December 23 or early morning on the 24th. They argued he used his newly purchased boat to dispose of her body in the San Francisco Bay, where it remained submerged until nature revealed the truth. But the case wasn't simple. There were no fingerprints, no blood, no eyewitnesses, and no murder weapon. The defense, led by attorney Mark Garagos, insisted there was no proof Scott committed any crime at all. He argued the case was built entirely on speculation and public hatred, not hard evidence. There is no direct evidence tying Scott Peterson to these murders. None. Still, Amber Frey's recordings painted a damning picture. The jury heard Scott lie, over and over. Pretending to be in Europe. Pretending he was innocent. Pretending he was grieving. Every lie was a crack in the foundation of his defense. But even with the affair and the lies, there remained one major question the jury had to answer: was Scott Peterson simply a terrible husband? Or was he a calculating murderer? As weeks turned into months, the trial took more turns, and delivered moments no one in the courtroom would ever forget. One of those moments came from Laci's mother. The courtroom was silent. In August 2004, Sharon Rocha, Laci Peterson's mother, took the stand. The woman who had once welcomed Scott into her family, now faced him from the witness box. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. She spoke about Laci's joy, her energy, her laughter. About her excitement to become a mother. About decorating the nursery. About buying baby clothes and imagining the day she'd finally meet her grandson, Connor. She was glowing. She had that pregnancy glow. She described what it felt like to be told her daughter's body had washed ashore. What it meant to bury both her daughter and her unborn grandson in the same casket. Jurors looked away. Some cried. It was one of the most emotional moments in the entire trial. And for many, it shifted something. The prosecution leaned into the pain. Not to manipulate, but to humanize. To remind the jury, this wasn't just a headline. It was a life. 2 lives. Erased. Meanwhile, Scott showed little reaction. He rarely cried. He never testified. The defense claimed he didn't need to. They argued that the real reason Scott was hated wasn't because of evidence, it was because of how he acted. The calm demeanor. The affair. The lies. But not all lies are crimes. Still, the jury had heard enough. After 5 months of testimony and nearly 900 pieces of evidence, the fate of Scott Peterson rested in the hands of 12 strangers. Would they believe he was a killer beyond a reasonable doubt? Or would the lack of direct evidence cast just enough doubt to set him free? On November 12, 2004, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom braced itself. After nearly 6 months of trial and weeks of deliberation, the courtroom was filled with heavy silence. Scott Peterson sat still. Laci's family held hands, bracing for the words that would define the rest of their lives. The clerk stood and read the verdict, guilty. First-degree murder for the death of Laci Peterson. Second-degree murder for the death of unborn baby Connor. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Tears fell. Some wept for justice. Others in shock. Scott showed no emotion. 1 month later, on December 13, 2004, the jury returned for sentencing. They recommended the death penalty. Outside, crowds cheered. Inside, Laci's family wept, not with joy, but with a sense of painful closure. Sharon Rocha would later say, "There's no happiness in this. There's no winning. I just want my daughter back." Scott Peterson was sent to San Quentin State Prison, placed on death row. But the story didn't end there. In the years that followed, Peterson's legal team filed multiple appeals, claiming juror misconduct and an unfair trial due to media bias. And in 2020, a major shift came. The California Supreme Court overturned his death sentence, citing errors in jury selection. The conviction remained, but the penalty phase would need to be retried. In 2021, Scott Peterson was resentenced to life in prison without parole. To this day, he maintains his innocence. But for many, including Laci's family, the truth is clear. This wasn't just the story of a murder. It was the story of a young woman, Laci Peterson, who never got to raise her child, never got to live the life she dreamed of, and never had the chance to say goodbye. Her name is what should be remembered. Not just how she died, but how she lived. Thank you for watching all the way through this exploration of the Scott Peterson case. It's a stark reminder that beneath the surface of any life, there can be complexities that we might never fully understand. What does justice truly mean when lives are forever changed? How do we balance the search for truth with respect for those affected? We invite you to share your thoughts and reflections below. What stood out to you most in this story? How do cases like this shape our view of trust and truth? Your voice matters here, so don't hesitate to join the conversation. If you found this video engaging, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.